Hello, my name's David Eames, and welcome to the On Your Mind podcast. Today we're going to talk about death. Mikey, what do you think about death?
Oh, gloomy. It does scare me, to be honest, and I don't know if there's a word around this, because you always tell me, oh, that's this thing, you can look in this book. I find a lot through you, but I had a massive anxiety around death, and I remember for months, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And every morning when I wake up, death was on my mind. And then I'd just be having really nice days and conversations and moments in my life. And this looming feeling and overarching sensation came over me of doom. And I just started thinking about my immortality. So, yeah, the truth is...
Your immortality. Oh, you're longer lived than the rest of us then.
My mortality. Yeah. Been playing too much Mortal Kombat. But within that, I've really sort of tried to read Buddhist philosophies and as much as I can, because when I'm scared of something, I try and attack it and look into it. So in all that confusion and fear-based part of my life, I've tried looking more into it, but it's always something that can get the better of me.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Owen? What do you think about death?
It used to terrify me, especially as a kid. I think we mentioned it on the last podcast when we were talking about anxiety. I can remember having just this notion or this realization of once you die, you never, ever, 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 and I could not get that loop out of my brain. It's ever, 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 ever. You're done forever and ever and ever. And I don't think as a child I could comprehend it. And the problem is, speaking to your parents, especially in their 80s and 90s, about, I think I'm worried about death. You'll be right. You're like, yeah, but I'm not all right. And it was a difficult one to try and broach because it wasn't something that you wanted to acknowledge. Because a lot of the times when you have something that's a strange feeling, once you acknowledge it, it becomes real. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And obviously, sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. And obviously, for me at the time, I was kind of trying to push it away. And I don't know, I think that the more comfortable you get within life, then there's a little bit of a happier medium that I could find with it. I think the only thing that would concern me with death now is more because I've got children. So I'd be concerned because obviously they are my priority. Same as Stace, like she's my priority, and obviously it's not really on my mind as much as it used to be. It used to really scare me. But I mean, we had the odd thing, like Stace had a pain in her chest, and then we got a phone call from the doctors. You need to get to the hospital because it might be a blood clot, and obviously I know people that's killed, and you go from just this happily going along the road, everything's fine, to then all of a sudden you jackknifing and sliding sideways. And luckily she was fine and it was all good, but I know a lot of people when it's not been all good. And I've had friends in the past where their partner had an asthma attack, nipped to the hospital, everything's going to be fine, see you at 5, and they passed away. And they had 2 small children, and I mean, they've picked themselves up and they've got on with it. But I think it's that just not knowing is the terrifying thing. But you also wouldn't want to know, would you? If you could play a game to know exactly when your death is, you wouldn't want to know.
You'd live quite a rigid life towards it, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But by the same token, quite a few people report when they're given a terminal diagnosis that they didn't know how to live until they knew their death was coming.
Yeah.
Because I think that we can actually use death and our mortality in a very positive way, and allowing it to make us value our day-to-day existence all the more.
Yeah.
It's this whole, you like the Open Golf was on, at the weekend, and they talk about, you get towards the end of the round, this is a really important putt. Well, it's no less important, no more important
than the first one. Yeah.
And they all count, and every day that we have is as valuable. Some may stand out more, but we've only got a limited number of them.
Yeah, I mean, I saw something the other day, and they said, there's a genie in a person. And he says, I can give you $1 million. If I give you £1 million and you woke up tomorrow, how would you feel? And they're like, I'd feel amazing. Okay. if I give you £10 million and you woke up tomorrow, how would you feel? And they're like, I'd feel even better. I'd feel the best. Oh, it'd be amazing. What if I gave you £10 million but you didn't wake up tomorrow? How would you feel? And they're like, I feel bad. And it's like, well, okay, well, you can wake up tomorrow but you don't get the 10 million. How would you feel? And they're like, awesome. And it's like, but you don't get up and feel awesome because it's not always there. There's not always someone reminding you of that. And I think it's taking that sometimes to remind yourself that you're not doing too bad. I mean, look at what's going on in the Ukraine and everything else at the minute. There's a lot to be thankful for. And especially like you've just said about people with terminal illness. Sometimes, everyone will either save for a rainy day or maybe tomorrow. When people start doing, that's when I think they start realising that it's not just about work, eat, sleep, repeat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That whole thing about how you're going to feel tomorrow if you don't wake up, the thing is you're not going to feel anything.
Yeah.
That I don't believe there's anything beyond this life. It'd be a nice, comforting thought if there was. But I think it's worthwhile acting on the basis that there isn't, so we make the best of this time. And maybe that time after life is the time before our birth. Nothing to fear, in a way. It's just non-existence.
Yeah.
But that's a scary idea. Like the universe winks out and we're gone with it.
Do you have any quotes that have helped you with death? Like, you always seem to pluck out a quote from nowhere. Have you had any towards death that you can refer to?
Well, there's one that I quite like from my favourite Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius. And he said that when each man dies, he loses the same thing. And I'm massively paraphrasing here, that he doesn't have the past because it's gone, and he doesn't have the future because it's yet to come. All he has is the present moment.
Poet.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And that's it. And that's about valuing the present moment because it's the only thing we know we have.
Yeah.
That nothing is guaranteed for the future.
Yeah, I always, when a meme pops up or something, but there was one, the fear of death stems from the fear of life. And it does ground you, doesn't it? You start thinking about, hang on a minute, am I living in the moment right here, right now? Am I living to the fullest? I've just got a list of endless tasks ahead of me, and actually my daughter's sat by my side here that I could be playing with and spending a moment with and really appreciating what I've got. But the jargon and the bureaucratic admin side of life can really get to you. So just when I swipe down, I see these memes pop up and reaffirming, like, be a human. What are you doing with your life? Give you a bit of a slap. It's really healthy for me.
Yeah, but I think also that the whole thing about the admin isn't really living, and the bits with your daughter are.
Yeah.
Is kind of a mistake in a way, because it's all life and it's all valuable. Yeah. So I think it's about trying to find value in even the menial tasks.
Good attitude, yeah.
If you're doing the dishes, then trying to do them, in the best way you can, and enjoy it rather than thinking, no, I've got to do it. Because it also features something else, which is the idea of freedom, that we only ever do things that we choose to do. So no one's making us do anything. We don't have to do it. We choose to do
that
it.
Present moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I wished I was doing something other.
Yeah, and it's that, people talk about it as mindfulness. Some people think that's about meditation, but I think there's a meditative approach one can have to life in general.
Yeah.
It's a great attitude.
Without dropping into a complete state. Because I think, for me, it's a lot about acknowledging everything. Trying to acknowledge, like you say, being in the moment. A big thing for me was, I remember, not the first time I heard it, but time waits for no one. And it was a throwaway phrase that I've heard in the past so many times. And then I sat and I thought about it. And I know rich people who've got cancer and they can't buy their way out of it. And I know poor people who have got cancer and then they've managed to survive. And all these different things that literally, there's no way to stop time and change anything. Like, when your time's up, your time's up. But acknowledging certain things for me made a massive difference, because Monday was always associated with shit. Doom, gloom. It's Monday. Everyone hates Monday. It's this, it's that. And obviously, whenever I've spoken to people, they've always had the same sort of opinion, and especially over weekends and the week. So the weekend, it goes past like a Porsche, it flies past. But it's because you're not acknowledging the days or the time or what you're doing. Because every day at work, you're looking forward to your break. You're looking forward to dinner. You're looking forward to home time. You're looking forward to tea. You're looking forward to what you're watching, because you're chasing through the week to get to the weekend. But Saturday, you blink and it's midnight.
Yeah.
Then Sunday, you're kind of depressed by 2:00 because tomorrow's Monday. And a big thing for me, and especially with the kids, I've always tried to be vocal. Like, oh, it's Saturday, what we're going to be doing. Or if we are off for a week, I'm as vocal about it being Monday as I am when it's a working week. Because otherwise, for us in particular, you don't seem to get the same sort of value out of a week in a week that you hate and a week that you love. So when we're on holiday, we've just gone back from Bulgaria. A week away or a fortnight away can go past so fast, whereas the weeks building up to it drag.
Yeah.
But it's, in my opinion, or personally, the way I deal with it, it's a mindset of trying to convince yourself, like washing the pots, that it's okay, that this is good, and this is going to lead to me then sitting down and having a cup of tea, and this is going to lead to that, and positive elements.
Yeah.
Because
living in the moment as much as possible.
For real. Because it's
a
very
social
difficult.
construct, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you're living by, or conditioned reality of, this is the good, this is the bad, these days are supposed to be...
Monday's shit, Friday's good.
Yeah.
And realistically, I love my Fridays. I look forward to a Friday, but I make a big point of it, and I try and enjoy it with the kids, or like make it, what we're going to do today, we'll take the dogs, or we're going to have something different for tea. I don't know what it is, but it's more acknowledging what day we're in, what we're doing, and what's happening all the time, not just in the shit. Because otherwise it just seems to then reinforce that negative stereotype that my parents had, that their parents had, that their parents had. And realistically, we're in a pretty good space.
Yeah.
We're quite a fortunate bunch.
It's something I work on a lot with my clients, trying to appreciate work more and get more out of it. And I find that it actually works quite well, is that people can start to perform better. More often than not, I find the counselling kind of pays for itself because people get promoted or their businesses do better. Just having that positive attitude just rubs off, and they find that their relationships with colleagues and that get better. One client, I have at the moment is she suddenly, her colleagues want to consult her about feeling good about work, whereas that wasn't the case previously.
I must say, even the most cliche saying ever, YOLO, you only live once. There's a lot of truth into that. And when I say that, I think about the risk taking, and it really does sort of make me consider, do I really want to be doing this? It's not I go and start jumping out of planes and bungee jumping all the time, but in terms of business, in terms of my day-to-day, thinking of money, I will take a risk every so often, because I think, why on earth not? What have I got to gain out of this? And there's a healthy balance to be found in that. But that reminder of death, that reminder of you only live once, does push me into those sort of strains of life where the good stuff comes out of it when you start putting yourselves into them risks.
Yeah, my life has also been through several disasters. 30 years ago, I lost my business. We ended up with our house repossessed, and at the same time I'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness. But we got through it, and I recovered from the illness after it took about 8 years to fix, or more, 10 years. And eventually you start to make a bit of money again. Things aren't as bad as you ever think they're going to be until it's over. And the whole thing is, life is a game that only ends when it ends. And often what we fear about the future is much worse than what the future actually brings. And one thing that we can learn through getting through difficulties is that we get through them. Yeah. But there comes a day when you don't get through it. I often get taken by when people go to the doctors, they might get that illness, diagnosed, you've got an incurable illness here. People don't tend to talk terminal now because it's changed a bit, but often they suddenly, I'm going to die. It's like it comes as a surprise. And
you always were going to.
Yeah, that's right. The moment you're born, life is the only 100% terminal illness. We're all going to die from life in the end.
Yeah.
It's like cancer. People worry about cancer. Well, if you don't get it today, you're going to get it tomorrow, or else something else is going to kill you more often than not.
I think a thing that helped me alleviate some of the stress and worry and neurosis towards it was finding really hard tasks to do in my days. For me, I love to exert myself physically, and going into boxing and sport and football and so on, when I'm pushing myself to a limit, that feeling where you're out of breath and you can't physically go anymore.
Your lungs are burning.
It just diminishes all these random feelings going off in my head. It calms me. So in the day, at night, I feel I'm ready to rest. And it's days where I've been stuck inside, stagnant, often staring at a screen for me, where I then start to have all these thoughts and feelings and things emerge. And it can be as simple as a walk outside or just a bit of movement helps me get away from those really negative feelings I've found.
You've got to feed your brain, man. You've got to feed your brain. And I think, I mean, video games used to get a bad rap because it was, people would see it and it would just be kids doing this and that, and it's, oh yeah, it's a waste of time. But ultimately, if that is something that just eases everything out for you, like I love taking the dogs for a walk. I love playing games, or like I buy a lot of board games and card games with the kids because it's something physical, it's not electronic, and it's something that we can all get involved in. But even when we went away, like we're playing cards at the table or in different games each night because you order your food and whatnot. You don't want it to be boring. So like there's always something in Stacey's bag that we can pull out and play, like a different Uno or whatever it is. But I think you need to feed your brain because unfortunately everyone gets that sort of them same weird feelings that just roll around their brain, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's anxiety about death. It could be all sorts of stuff, but it's not ever really that positive. It's always a bit moochy. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose that when I was thinking of martial arts and boxing, there's something about being humbled a lot of the time too. A fear and a factor of death is maybe for some people the physical element and the pain that it might bring. They don't know what experience is gonna be like. And when I've been flatlined before by a punch, this isn't the greatest advice ever. Go and get punched in the face. But there was something humbling about facing adversity all the time and being pushed against the ropes and being tested a lot. And that kind of, I remember when I was really going through the fear and worries of death, I was hitting the gym all the time. And that was the way that it would sort of calm my mood, is being pushed. Maybe that was just a sickening sort of mentality I brought to the table.
It's just what you chose as a distraction.
Yeah, I found
And there are times when the anxiety gets to us, and distraction is kind of your only escape from it because you can't just turn it off.
Yeah.
That when I was around 55, the death anxiety got really huge for me because my dad was 55 when he died, and I thought I can't be older than he's ever been. You know, it's like I felt like it was an upper limit.
Yeah.
And when I reached 60, I never expected to get to 60, and to be honest, I didn't treat my body in a way as though I expected it to live that long. And it all felt like a bonus after that, and a lot of that anxiety died away. But there was a period, you know, in that decade of the 50s, which is hard. And there's this thing called an existential crisis that we all go through at some point. We all know that we're mortal, but for most of us, we start off with the idea, but I'm probably going to figure a way out of that. That I'm protected, and
I remember as a kid I used to think that
it happens to other people.
Yeah,
it's like
maybe I'm on the Truman Show.
Yeah,
maybe this is all about me, and actually I'm immortal.
Yeah, and
did you have them feelings too?
Yeah.
But then something happens, which makes us realise that it all hangs by a thread. It might happen to someone we know. It might be just something like a crime that is committed against us. It might be losing a job or something like that. That suddenly we realise that things aren't going to plan. There is no plan.
Yeah.
And it all hangs by a thread all the time. And that can precipitate this existential crisis where death anxiety becomes the big thing. Because if you think about it, the whole idea of being immortal is kind of outrageous in a way. You know, when someone dies, someone that you know or care about, someone who seems to die before their time, and that idea that they're just gone, you're never going to speak to them again. It is absurd. It's outrageous to think about.
So to literally picture infinite life. I mean, surely at some point, if you're living for infinity and just going on and on and on, and you keep having to say goodbye to all the loved ones and the things in your life that make it so full and wholesome.
Yeah. The only way to avoid losing other people is to die.
Yeah.
And if you don't die, then you lose everything and everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult because it's almost, it's the, the anger acceptance model. Because obviously, as you know, we've lost a few members of Stacey's family recently, as in her nan, who was 91. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes when you get to that point, 5 minutes before it happens, you're willing them to die, just because they've not got any quality of life. And you think you're going to be all right with it. And it's happened to me a few times with my own grandparents and other people. Like, you keep going to see them at hospital and you think, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right. We just need to get you to rest and relax and everything will be okay. Once you've gone, you're good. But the minute they're gone, even though you've willed them to die, it's even more heartbreaking. Because then, not that you're responsible, but you're like, oh, fuck, if we only had 10 more minutes. And literally you've been sat holding their hands for 2 weeks. But then when you lose someone that literally says to you, I'm not ready to die. Oh. And it's a cancer or whatever it is. Even when you see them half the person they were and just struggling to even take a breath, and you're thinking, look, this is cruel, this is awful, just go. The memory of that is soon forgotten, because once they've gone, all you've got is the memory of who they were. And that to me is something that I really embrace to remember, but it also makes me really sad to know they're not there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And it feels like a choice.
Yeah.
You choosing that perception, because I suppose a lot of people would, they say, oh, don't go and see them because you don't want that to be your memory.
Yeah, and I've got that with, like, if I turn that on, if I pull the curtain back, that's how I can see my granddad.
Yeah.
But I need to lock that away, because my granddad is a bigger man than the person that was lying in that bed. And it's the same as Stacey's Auntie Nikki. She's affected me massively because she was one of my closest supporters, if you like. I mean, I'm a bit of an idiot. I'm a bit of a madhead. And from day one, she kind of took me under her wing. And it was accepted. And I've not very often been accepted. I mean, she was an outcast as much as I was. So whenever we got together, there was never that, remember to not swear, don't say the C word, don't do this, don't do that. It was always, this is home, this is normal. And she's been a big impact in our life. And then, unfortunately, she passed away. And I'm definitely not over it. I've not grieved.
No. And I think, we will do a future session, perhaps even the next one, about grief, because these two things are inextricably related.
Back to back.
And that thing, when my father died, going in to see his body for 6 months to a year afterwards, that's the only image of him that I could call to mind.
Yeah.
And it took quite some time before I could remember him how he was previously.
Yeah, it's strange.
And that, as your life goes on, that legion of the lost gets ever larger. So I definitely know many more people now who are no longer with us than those that still are, thankfully.
It's cruel to a degree, isn't it?
As I say, that's the absurdity, the outrageous nature of our existence. But I think embracing it is essential, because we avoid it, and our modern society sanitises it and takes it all away from us, and we need to embrace it ourselves. I like to use the image sometimes that imagine that all the money you were ever going to have was in one box of treasure, and you didn't know how deep it was. So every time you spent some money, you had to reach into this box of treasure, and you never knew when the last coin was coming out.
Yeah.
You might spend it a bit more carefully.
Yeah.
Because our life's a bit like that. We never know which is our last day.
Yeah.
9/11 events like that, thousands of people, they didn't know that was their last day.
No, this is it. Yeah.
I think this was the last podcast we did, but when you were leaving, you said something really nice, and it's what you said before about you got to a certain age, and then every day after that was just a surprise. It tickled me, but it did make me reflect. Like, is it when you get to a certain age, you have to face this hurdle, and then you come to this other side of, I can live in this manner now. It's all sort of, thank God I've got another day on the earth.
Yeah, well, I mean, someone once said that before a man's 40, he never thinks about death, and after the age of 40, he wonders how he ever thought of anything else. Because and it is a stage of life thing in a way, that kids, they have that moment again. You spoke about as a kid. I remember as a teenager myself being up in my bedroom doing my homework, which itself was a rare thing. I was a very delinquent child, but suddenly having this whole terror of being on my own, a real existential dread, and had to go and sit with the family despite they were watching some religious crap on the TV that bored the hell out of me. But I just needed to be with other people, just filled with that dread and terror. And I think that dread is there for us, so we avoid it. But what I'm suggesting is maybe we could need to acknowledge it, and that's the way we value our lives all the more.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned religion there, and obviously, did you have a religious background then?
Kind of as a kid, not in my family particularly. I did get confirmed in the Church of England as a kid, and then sort of drifted away from it. But then, in the early 90s and up until the early 2000s, I developed a very strong Christian belief, and actually became a lay preacher in the Church of England. And then lost that faith. I kind of regret that loss in some ways, because it was a great comfort.
Yeah,
it really was a great comfort to me.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast of recent, and this girl that sort of changed her faith. In fact, I think she went atheist, but still to this day, because it was, I think, more of a commune she was in, or it was a real structured belief system, and again, everything was referring to hell. So she's converted, and now she's atheist, but she still fears hell.
Okay.
And she's got this feeling of, I still need to live righteous, though. I still need to live in this way, because what if they're right? What if they're right?
Yeah, which I think is actually a complete misunderstanding of what the whole Christianity business was about. Because one thing I do take forward is that idea, which I think is the model of perfect love, which is about acceptance and forgiveness. And grace is the word in theological terms, whereas forgiveness doesn't have to be earned. It's just given freely.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And, it seems to me a lot of people on that, what's called casuistry, that it's all about this having to earn your way into heaven, which is absolute bull. That's not what the gospel message was at all.
Yeah, and even if it is, there's 1,000 different versions of a similar story. That on one version you can just say sorry just before you die. On other ones you have to give him 3 kidneys and 10 Hail Marys. It's just one of those things that, I suppose, ultimately, in my opinion, it comes down to a coping mechanism of my anxiety of sitting in my bedroom as a kid thinking, oh my God, you're going to die, nothing ever, and you never, ever come out. But then there's other kids that have been programmed from birth that, all right, well, he is our saviour, he does this, he does that, whichever religion it is, and don't panic. Everything's nice at the other side, because you get to see your dogs that you've lost, you get to see your family that you've lost. Everything's free.
Yeah.
Well,
there's free Wi-Fi, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but they don't realise that eternity is forever.
Exactly.
And like, eternal life is kind of terrifying in its way. I don't think people appreciate what eternity is. The Earth is a relatively young planet compared to the universe. Here's the thing. I think Carl Sagan talked about this as an expression of deep time. The summit of Everest is made of marine limestone. Okay, that the summit of Everest, which is is the epitome of eternity. Well, it was beneath the sea.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's a new thing. Everest is a new thing.
Did he do the pale blue dot talk?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, that's a great speech.
Yeah, a great guy, Carl Sagan.
With this, there's 2 sides we've spoke about, and what advice would you give to somebody that's never thought of death, or I'm sure they have, but they try and always push it to the back of their mind, and then somebody that's just ridden with thoughts of death and can't get through it? What is, and how do you find that fine balance for those 2 people?
I think it's difficult. It's just about being able to accept the reality of it. My counselling hero is a guy called Irvin Yalom, and he wrote a book which I enjoy called Staring into the Sun, which is, I think, that's
bad
quite
advice.
No, but it's quite a good description about what looking at death is. It's like staring into the sun. It's really hard to do, and painful to do.
Probably one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. But it's that recognising that we're here a brief time, and to value it, and that we don't have anything to fear, because there's nothing. If there's nothing there, what is there to fear? It's like fearing the time before your birth.
Yeah. It sounds silly when you put it like that.
Yeah.
When you explain to someone, were you scared before you were born? It's like, well, of course not. But to be scared afterwards. I think it's this anxiety and the fear it's a difficult thing because of how people deal internally and how they manage that. Because, like, obviously with having children, it's interesting when at first, like, both of my children have been through it and they've done World War II at school or whatever it was, and bear in mind how long ago that was now. But the difference is when you say the olden days and there's not footage of like the Romans and there's nothing on YouTube, that's different to when someone's colorized Hitler's speeches and World War II in colour, that they can actually see, oh, there's a child there. This is real. This is a normal thing. Yeah. And we went through a lot of that. And one of those where we'd go up to bed, Sadie and I, and they wouldn't settle. But they didn't want to acknowledge the reality of what they were scared of, because again it would make it real, so they wouldn't even tell us. So eventually we got it out of them. I'm scared of the war, and you're like, okay. I mean, they haven't even got to like atomic bombs or anything yet. They're just worried about troops. And so I think it's hard, especially when you see it from a smaller person that's trying to deal and trying to get that across to you. But it's always there. I think it's always there with anyone, but it's a coping mechanism, I suppose, to try and however you can get through it to know that you're going to be all right.
I think another positive thing that we can take from confronting this is to value other people's lives more. So if we see it that every time a life is lost, a universe is lost.
Yeah.
Because the universe only exists as we perceive it.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get struck by this, that the viewpoint I have at any given moment, I'm the only person in the universe that shares that.
Yeah.
And there are 7 or 8 billion other viewpoints like that on this planet.
I like that saying there, you are the universe experiencing itself.
Yeah.
Completely true.
Yeah. And so every time someone dies, that unique universe is lost.
Yeah.
Completely.
And I've become increasingly pacifist as I get older. Let's fight on to the end in Ukraine. Well, we're asking other people to do that and to lay their own lives down.
Yeah, and what comes of it? Honestly, it's infuriating.
I read a book, Max Hastings' book about the Vietnam War and how terrible that was, and hundreds of thousands of lives lost. And now Vietnam is a tourist destination.
Yeah. I've been.
What was all that suffering for?
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
But it never stops. It will never change, and I think that's the scary thing.
Well, maybe it'll never change if we say it will never change. Maybe some of us should start thinking that we need to
exactly.
change this.
It'd be nice to change, without a doubt. Yeah. But I mean, everything's hard rooted into this shitty model. But I mean, even I can remember my uncle once put a post on because he lost his wife. He lost my auntie, and he put a post on it. It was really quite sweet. It just said, please, before complaining about life, try and remember that not everyone got to live their full one.
Yeah. And
it kind of hit me a bit because obviously she was my auntie, and I know she was suffering over the past 2 or 3 years, but she wasn't suffering for the 47 before that he'd spent with her. That she meant as much as what Stacey means to me, and it kind of, I was like, fucking hell, because obviously social is a lot about moaning. It's either moaning or attention. Realistically, it's like, I can't believe this has happened, babe, or whatever. Just to get that ball rolling, just to get a bit of fuss. And I get it. Everyone wants to be felt. Everyone wants to feel special. But it's very easy to put that out there and be kind of moany when it's not that bad. You've got an all right life. And obviously the way he put it, it kind of hit it home to me to think maybe you need to appreciate it a bit more, or just value the fact that you are all right and everything is okay. Because as much as death is scary, we're not currently dead. We're all right. So we're still conscious enough to be able to consider how lucky we are rather than worry about dying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
And I often talk to the kids about a mindset being a monetary value. And if you waste, if the energy you're putting into worrying about this, if I charged you £1 a minute, you'd stop worrying about it within seconds.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because you'd be terrified. Because it means a lot to them. Like the kids now, they're 10 and 14. So money's starting to get a little bit more, I want this, I want that. Yeah, no problem, but we're going to have to work together. And so, because one of them doesn't like school, and she comes in, oh, this is bad, that's bad, I hate this, I hate that. I'm like, yo, You're putting a lot of energy into. I've got no problem listening to your problems. I've got no problem you expressing how you feel, but it's all bad. So if that's a value, if that's costing you 25 quid to get that off your chest, it wouldn't bother you as much anymore. And I think, especially with like death and everything else, rather than spending your money on just being allowed to worry about it, just like pumping a pound in, just putting a pound in every time you want to worry, you kind of live to learn to live without worrying about. Or I have.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah. I've bled my ocean dry at times.
Yeah, and to find the value in the everyday.
Yeah.
You know, Samuel L. Jackson, I heard him on an interview once say that any day above the grass is a good one.
Yeah.
And that will do. That's the baseline. And if we can try and live with that idea that life itself is a gift.
Yeah.
And to really relish that gift, and it's not. I'm not talking about bucket list stuff. It's in the everyday. There's value there. Just to look at the sky.
Yeah. And then it can perpetuate or can propel that bucket list stuff as well. And I think that is a great baseline to be at, though. Just be present, enjoy the gift. Because I remember a nice image, a guy, it was in the pub, obviously, most good conversations have come from there for me. But he just said, listen, when I get to my grave, I don't want to just have crawled in, nice and sedentary, just got in there, snuggled in and said, oh, this is it, goodbye. I want to crash like a thunderbolt and just bolt into there. And what the hell was that? Don't know, but I had a good time. And I think there's a balance in there with me, because I've got a family and people to think about too. So I can't just go crashing into it, thunderbolting. But I want to make sure there are them opportunities and moments.
Yeah, but alternatively, do you want to go there thinking that I've made the most of my relationships, that I knew how to love and how to be loved?
Yeah.
Because that is more than anything else, in my view.
And that can be your own thunderbolt, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is.
My thunderbolt could be that I act like a twat and the kids can't like it, rather than being a stuffy dad that's a bit miserable. Do you know what I mean?
Is that crashing into it going, I've done my absolute all to
but
make the most.
It's your choice to make, however you define that. It's like a good wine is one you enjoy.
Yeah.
Never mind what the critics say. A good movie is one you enjoy. There's no such thing as high culture and low culture.
No.
If you like a tune, you know, whether it's some Beats or Beethoven, it doesn't matter. You like it, it's good.
Because I've started using that quote. I think that from you, a good wine's one you enjoy. Because I watched that documentary recently, Sour Grapes, if you've seen it. It's all about, again, connoisseurs and everything. But they ended up doing over all these connoisseurs with putting fake labels on and giving like real
it's all schmonz.
Cheap wines and all schmonz. But it was just fascinating, and a good wine is a good wine, isn't it? You can articulate it however you wish and want, but it's just to make you look and sound a certain way. And actually, what do you just really enjoy? It could be a £20 bottle. Yeah.
And some things that you value them more because you don't have them all the time.
Yeah.
I remember years ago watching a holiday program about a bunch had gone on a tour of Burgundy, and they go to a vineyard every morning, then have a slap-up lunch, then another vineyard in the afternoon, and then dinner in the evening. And after 3 days, they spoke to one guy, and he said, I could kill for a cup of tea.
Yeah. But that's exactly it. That is exactly it, because the more you're given, it's just a bit shit. Like, if you overindulge... I can remember there was, back in the day when PlayStation 1 came out.
2 over there.
Yeah, you could get it chipped. And what that meant was, instead of paying £40 a game, you rented the game from the video shop, borrowed it from your friend and copied the disc. Obviously, mine was chipped. Yeah, and instead of playing a game and finishing a game and really enjoying a game, I was playing it, and all I was thinking about was, I wonder what those 6 are like. And then I was wondering about what those 20 are like. And then before you know it, I had every game you could buy. But I had no time to play them because I was too busy copying them. And it's bananas, because I've got exactly what I want, but what's that?
Yeah.
And obviously with the death side of things, I think it was when Bill Gates, Apple, Bill Gates, right?
Yeah.
No, Microsoft, Bill Gates. Apple's
Steve Jobs. You mean?
Steve Jobs. Sorry, Bill Gates, you're still alive. When Steve Jobs died, he wrote a list saying, or was it Steve Jobs? Whoever wrote it, it was like a watch that's £5 will still tell the same time as a watch that's £1 million, and it's really true. But I think a treat is still nice, and a treat is still important. So the people that were just overindulging in the best meal every night, you're not getting the most out of it. No. So you can still treat yourself. You can still, like, if there's certain things that you like, but I think when it becomes an obsession, or when it takes over and starts affecting how you think about other people and how you treat people, then it's a bigger problem. Because if I get judged all the time because I'm a scruffy guy with tattoos and I often wear flip-flops and I've got a Tourette's mouth. People will judge me for that. But I'm actually a really helpful... I will help anyone as much as I can. And it's kind of one of them things, if you let that get you down, then it's a bigger problem than what they've already got, if that makes sense.
I wonder if there's a documentary out. I would love to find it, but just where it goes to everybody's sort of deathbed quotes or sayings, or what they'd like, find a commonality in people that become on their deathbeds and what conversations they had surrounding that. I'd be fascinated to see.
One of my favourites is Lord Salisbury, I think Lord Melbourne, the Victoria's first Prime Minister, said, "Die, my dear doctor, that's the last thing I shall do."
Nice.
Yeah. Fair play.
Yeah, I mean, that's class, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
But there's the truth in that. That is the last thing that we're all going to do, and that searching for the distraction out there, that things, experiences, to solve our problems is not the answer. The answer's right here.
Embrace what you've got.
The answer is right here. The secret of life is not getting what you want, it's wanting what you've got.
Yeah. That's a good finisher, mate. I like that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm clipping that bit.
Is that yours, is it? Or is that someone else's?
That's nicked. It's all nicked.
It's all, it's all nicked. We're all right.
Recycled.
Yeah.
A young actor once asked John Gielgud about acting, and he said, "Well, you should steal, dear boy, because you can be sure that they've stolen it from someone else."
Yeah.
Same as everything.
Yeah.
Same as everything.
Nothing new under the sun.
No.
Okay, well, thanks very much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye.